My name is Dr. Courtney Renee Marsh, and I am originally a Southern girl from Atlanta, Georgia, but now I'm a Midwest girl. I've been in Illinois for a little over 7 years now, and it's definitely growing on us. I moved to Illinois originally for optometry school, so I am currently an optometrist here in Central Illinois. I've been practicing for 3+ years. Time is flying. In my spare time, I do a lot of traveling. My husband and I enjoy going to different restaurants, and content creation is something that's been a passion of mine as well, just to give more of a realistic experience for women. Career is what I focus on, family, and now recently being a mother. So I like to make things a little bit more relatable for women that maybe think, oh, I could never do this. I kind of want to be an example of an average person who can do things just kind of working with what you have, so we can live our best life, is what I always say. Well, okay, so the simple answer, which most people think they know about me, my dad is an optician. My parents have taught me to not only take what they have done, but go a step further. And so my dad owned several eye practices when we were younger. So of course the natural step would be, oh, now I'm going to be an optometrist because my dad was in the eye care field. And that's what people think. She just followed her dad. But that is actually not the truth. I was a very stubborn child. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. So at first I was like, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. And then I was like, yeah, Courtney, you're not that smart. And then I'm like, okay, I'll be some type of surgery. And so I shadowed, I remember a male doctor in orthopedic surgeon, and he asked me, do I want a family? And I said, yes. I'm like 16. He was like, do you want kids eventually? And I was like, absolutely. And he goes, choose another profession. And I was like, oh, he was like, try anesthesiology. So at this point, I'm weighing my options. I still know I want to be in medicine. I was like, I love animals. Let's try veterinary medicine. And I worked at an animal clinic for a year or two in Georgia. And I noticed that all the animals that come through this place are not happy. Nobody's happy to go to the doctor. So I was like, okay, I'll just buy some animals. And finally, I remember one day I was like, okay, well, what does it take to get into optometry school? And I looked it up. Well, before that, I Googled jobs. It was like top 10 jobs with the highest satisfactory rate, because I wanted a job where I learned that veterinary medicine it's kind of dark, but they have a really high suicide rate. Anyway. So I was like, okay, I want to be happy. And so optometry came up in that list. It might've been 9 or 10 at the time. And so I was like, oh, let me look and see what it takes to get into optometry school. And I looked at the list and I was like, I've already taken all of these classes, which was amazing. So I called my dad that day and I was like, hey, Dad. He's like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm applying to optometry school. And he was like, finally, you're listening to me. He was like, this is going to be perfect. And so I started shadowing optometrists. And I was like, oh my gosh, I kind of love this, because optometry is the field where people come to you blurry or with an issue, and you kind of have an immediate answer, or you fix their problems immediately. So the satisfaction rate is great. It's like, oh, you can't see? Pop these contacts in. Oh, your eyes are hurting. Oh, they're dry. Put these drops in. You have inflammatory response, here's some dry eye drops. We do have more complicated medical cases like glaucoma, but the medical aspect of optometry is what I love the most, because what I'm learning, and that kind of ties into our interview today, is people usually don't feel heard in the medical field. And I pride myself on okay, if I'm diagnosing somebody with glaucoma or macular degeneration, this isn't like a quick appointment. We're sitting down and I'm telling you, it's fine, because I'm going to be with you every step of the way. Your job is to just keep coming to your appointments. So that's the part that I'm passionate about. Every aspect of optometry, but just making people feel heard is what I've always been passionate about, which is very ironic as to the situation that I kind of currently experience with the medical field. Currently, I'm on maternity leave, but even dressing up today, I was like, oh, this is like going back to work. I'm not ready to go back to work right now, but it was exciting to be like, oh, when I go back to work, my patients are going to miss me and I get to work with these people. So I just wanted, a lot of people do not like what they do. And I think it shows in how they do their job. And a lot of my patients, when I first started optometry, told me, you really like your job. And the first time I heard it, I was like, that was weird. And then I kept hearing it back to back to back to back. So what that said to me, I received it, but I also thought about, that means they encounter a lot of people who don't like their job. So I think this is normal, but actually it's abnormal. But I was very intentional about picking a career. It took a little longer. I did not go the traditional route. Got an extra degree that was not necessary. But I was very meticulous in choosing something that I was like, what can I do for 30 years plus and still be happy about it? So that's kind of what I did. And I try to do that in a lot of my life. I'm an overthinker, which is a blessing and a curse, but it just means that we put a lot of thought into what we do and we plan a lot of things. Well, thinking back to how I felt when we first found out we were pregnant, it was a surreal moment. I actually recorded it because I was like, let me talk to my husband, and I brought him in. So a little bit of a backstory is we wanted to wait a few years. I wanted to wait a few years of marriage before having a child because we got married within a year of our first date. So I was like, okay, now we got to get to know each other, enjoy marriage, travel. I was still taking my board exams. He was still taking his bar exam. So we were, building a foundation. And so I think like 2.5 years in, we decided, okay, I'm going to get off birth control. And I had been on birth control for like 15 years, basically. And so I was like, I don't know how long this is going to take to get out of my system. It might take a long time. But anyway, let me just flush my body. I went to the doctor. They didn't think it was going to take that long. They're like 50% of people get pregnant within 6 months after they get off birth control. And then she said 80% of people get pregnant within the first year. And so after the first few months, I think we were like, oh, no, we're not pregnant yet. So we were finding ourselves getting a little stressed out at month 2 or month 3. And finally, we're like, you know what? We're just going to enjoy life. Like we had a couple of trips coming up. We're like, let's just enjoy life, have fun. Let's take all of the pressure off. And then, of course, 5 months after I got off birth control, we're like, oh, we're pregnant. And so it's funny because I was taking these birth control, these little strips, the cheap ones. And so after our vacation, we did a family vacation in Cabo last year, Mexico. And so I was like, when I got back, I was like, oh, I haven't started my menstrual. Let me take a few strips. And I look at it after a few seconds, I see the test strip and I didn't see the second line light up. So I just throw it away. And then a few days later, I was like, I still haven't started my cycle, but all my birth control, my pregnancy tests are negative. And so my friend was like, are you sure you're doing it right? And so I was like, okay, let me wait longer. And I waited longer and it was positive. And then I went in the trash can to get all the ones from the previous days and they were all positive. So I just wasn't waiting long enough. I guess even as a doctor, we are not perfect. Read the instructions, you guys, and be patient. So I brought my husband in. I was like, I think this is a positive strip. And then we recorded it. So it's cute. I think I posted the story 3 months after we found out we were pregnant. So it was a surreal moment. We were so happy, praising Jesus, singing and, hugging. And it was an amazing experience. We really, really were ready for that positive pregnancy test. My experience being pregnant, honestly, the first trimester, I was like, why do women all complain about pregnancy? This is easy. I didn't have any nausea. I still had energy. I'm working. I'm just doing all the things. And we were careful with travel during that period because, the first 3 months are like the sensitive period. But I was living my best life. And then second trimester, I slowed down, I'm showing more. I was very intentional about doing our baby showers. We had 2, one here in Champaign and one back home in Atlanta to make it easier for family and friends. So we did it during second trimester because I heard third trimester is where it all goes south. We even did our baby moon in the second trimester. For those of you guys who don't know what a baby moon is, it's like a honeymoon, but you just do it when you're pregnant. It's an excuse to go on a trip. So, and then third trimester hit. Oh my goodness. It hit me like a brick wall. And so I carried, everybody's like, you're all belly. And then even when I would go to my doctor's appointments, every time they bring out the measuring tape, they're like, wow, this belly is big. So I was retaining like a lot of fluid. So my baby was just living her best life and growing. She was already like ahead in the 70th percentile early in the appointment. So I slowed down a lot in the third trimester, and I was trying to work until like month 8 or so, and I did not make it. So I ended up having to go on medical leave at work a month or so earlier than I thought I would, because I just was like, my ankles. There wasn't enough compression socks or belly bands to get me through it, but I feel like I did pretty well. I went as far as I could. The beginning of my pregnancy was great. I didn't really have a lot of medical issues. I did get diagnosed with anemia towards the end, but I heard that's pretty common in pregnancy, especially with Black women. So I was just taking like over-the-counter iron supplements. But other than that, no major complications. Everything was going really well. I'm thankful to God for that. Though I had a pretty healthy pregnancy, I did not feel like I had the best support during pregnancy. So like you were saying earlier, which I found out later on is normal, they don't really want to see you in the first trimester. I thought that was odd because people around me who were of similar gestation age had several appointments and they were getting ultrasounds already. And maybe they had some other lining health conditions that I wasn't aware of, but it definitely like lit a spark in me to be like, okay, make sure that you're very vocal what's going on. And if you have any issues, I told myself, no matter if I felt like this was small or big, this is not the time to be strong and endure it all by yourself. I told myself I was going to be very intentional about if I feel like something is wrong, I'm going in. And so we did that. I only saw my gynecologist during my pregnancy one time, and it was for about 5 minutes. And I remember I cried after that appointment. So it's not like anything bad happened at the appointment. I came in, I was like, my feet are swelling, I'm having headaches and this and this and that. And she's like, oh, that's normal. Oh, that's normal. Oh yeah, it's too early to even think about having a baby. That's normal. Everything's fine. Da, 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 da. Okay, bye. See you next time. So that was the one encounter I had. And tomorrow will be 7 weeks postpartum. And I'm saying I still have only seen my OB one time, and I have not heard from them since my birth experience. And you would think they would have reached out, or I don't even know if she knows. But so the continuity of care was very much lacking. And I understand that. I'm a healthcare provider in Central Illinois, and I understand that there is a issue with staffing. But it definitely was something that I was concerned about. I told my husband when I left that appointment with my OB, I said, I just don't feel heard. I don't feel heard and I don't feel seen. And as a healthcare provider, this is how things slip through the crack and things go wrong because I don't feel like anybody's monitoring my pregnancy. And I just remember just going into work that was actually my last day of work. I had a meeting with my boss and I was like, I'm not at my best. And it would be a disservice to my patients to keep caring for them if I know that I'm not at my best. Stepping down for work was what I needed to get in a better headspace and mental space, not knowing what I had coming down the road. I'm very glad that I was more like taking care of me before that, because only God knows what would happen if I wasn't in that space. But I will say that before I was pregnant and I saw people having home births, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Why would anybody do that? And now, after my experience, I was like, I see why. I see why people would do that. Thankful to God to even be here 7 weeks postpartum. My baby girl is thriving and healthy. But it was scary, especially towards the end of my pregnancy, to feel like I was just a number. A lot of doulas have reached out to me since I've posted about my experience on social media. And I've just been thinking a lot more about midwives, and I didn't know that was so. Knowledge, just like what we're doing here today, knowledge is power. If you know better, you can do better. But if you don't know, then that might be the difference between me staying here another 1 or 2 years or another 10 or 20 years if I knew I have other options. Leading up to my birth, my husband and I were very excited. I mean, this is the moment we prepared for. We already knew baby girl was pretty big. I think at 7.5 to 8 months of gestation, she was already measuring 7 pounds. So he was like, big mama, you know? And so it showed in like how I was moving to. So we were hoping for her to come a little early. And every day we're like, this is it, this is it. And it was not it. And so what we later learned is your first pregnancy, you're more likely to go the full 40 weeks or more. And we did not know that. So we learned that through family and friends. And we actually sat with one of my friends from high school who's a doula. And we talked to her online. And so she gave us so much information. And what I told her after that meeting was, I've learned so much from you that I haven't learned going to the hospital. Thank you so much. Getting closer to it, my Braxton Hicks, and to this day, I can't really tell you, okay, what's the difference between Braxton Hicks and contractions? Because some of those Braxton Hicks I was like, it's time. It's happening right now. And then like it'll stop. And I'm like, oh, that's just a Braxton Hicks. So I can't really tell you, but I will tell you that they were getting stronger and stronger leading up until one day, they advised me to induce between 39 and 40 weeks of gestation because she was so big and they didn't want to risk her being well over 10 pounds and then we couldn't have her vaginally. So we were scheduled to be induced on September 12th. On September 11th in the morning, I went to the restroom and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm spotting. I didn't have any spotting third trimester. So I was like, oh, this is weird. Let me call them immediately. And so I called my husband from the other room and, I show him, we get on the phone. And while we're on the phone, fluid starts trickling. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is this? And, I step into the shower just to and then it's coming. He was like, oh yeah, that's it. So I'm on the phone. I'm like, my water broke. And they're like, oh, your water broke. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, are you having any contractions? I'm like, no, I'm not having any contractions right now. And they're like, okay, that's fine. Just stay at home and rest. And when your contractions pick up, once they get about 4 to 5 minutes apart, go ahead and come in. So I was like, okay, great. So contractions were kind of off and on that day. I was just resting, relaxing. We already had our hospital bag packed. We did really well with that. We had it packed 2 months in advance. So by that evening, I was like, it's time to go in. I've been consistently leaking throughout the day. Contractions have been coming. And so we go into labor and delivery triage and they start doing all the things. The first swab they do, the nurse is like, oh yeah, it's definitely amniotic fluid. That means your water has broke. We're going to get your room. She starts typing it in the computer. She's like, we're going to get room 1010. Did you guys bring your bags? And we're like, yeah, we brought our bags. She's like, great. And so I paused and I asked her, I was like, because I'm excited, but I like to set my expectations properly. That's just the type of person I am. I'm like, is there any situation where women have had their water that breaks and they're actively in labor, because she did say I was contracting, do they get sent home? And she was like, no, you guys are going to be here. You're being induced tomorrow anyway. So that wouldn't make sense for you to go home. You're here. I'm putting you in a room. And so we're like, whew, okay, great. It's happening. And so after that, the doctor, she was a first-year resident, came in and said she wanted to do some additional tests, which I thought was weird. I was like, okay, I don't know what other additional testing. She wanted to check my cervix, which was normal. I wasn't really dilated that much. I think it was less than a centimeter or something like that. But she wanted to do another test to confirm that it was amniotic fluid, which she told me that test was inconclusive. Mind you, this is after she checked my cervix. So now I'm bleeding. And when I did my research later at home, that can interrupt the results of that test. So she said she wanted to send me home. And I was like, oh, well, like, why? She was like, oh, well, if you get home and you start leaking again, let us know. And I remember I said, well, I'm actively leaking right now. I showed her. It's like, I've never stopped leaking. So you want me to go home, put a foot in the door, and then turn around and come right back? Because and so she was like, oh, so she brought her senior resident in, and I told them I wanted them to recheck it. It was inconclusive again. So I said the same thing to the senior resident, and she was like, I mean, like, if you go home and get like a big gush of fluid or a big gush of blood. So I looked at my husband. I was like, you know what? I'm not about to fight these people to take care of me. At this point, this is not my area of expertise. I'm an eye doctor. I don't specialize in this type of medicine. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. Let's go home. Let's pray about it. We'll come back tomorrow. We're being induced tomorrow anyway. Within that next 24 hours, I continued to leak consistently. So not only was I leaking, I'm now bleeding since she checked the cervix. So now it's active. I remember my husband like taking pictures of the towels because it was bad. Like a pad wasn't enough. Anyway, my family and friends were panicking because they're like, there's no way they sent you home. And I'm like, well, what do y'all think? Do you think we just ran out of the hospital? I was like, no, they told us to go home. And so, we're just keeping our safe space. We're praying. And then the next day when it's time for me to be induced, they tell you to call 2 hours before just to check in. So I call around 5 on the dot because I'm like, we need to, because after 24 hours of your membrane rupturing, you're at a higher risk for infection. So I call them and I'm like, hey, I'm just checking in. I'm being induced at 7. We're getting our things together. We're going to be on the way soon. And immediately the person on the phone goes, well, we're full today. We can call you. Is it okay if we call you in the night if we have any openings? And so I'm kind of shocked because as a healthcare provider, I'm like, you didn't ask for my date of birth, my name. You didn't pull up my account. Do you even know that I was in the triage last night? Do you know that I'm leaking fluid? Like, how can you say these things without even pulling up my account? You just dismissed me immediately. What if the baby was halfway out? You didn't even try to ask me any questions. So that was alarming. Meanwhile, I'm in active labor, so that's already stressful. So I said to him, it has been 30 hours since I have been leaking fluid. After 24 hours, the risk of infection goes up. I said, are you okay with that? And then he said, oh, let me put you on hold. I don't know who, well, we later found out who he spoke to because she told us, but he comes back on the phone. He's like, okay, come in. So we come in, and I was very proud of myself for that because had I not been aggressive about it, and we tend to get the aggressive stereotype, and I don't see myself as that person. I'm very animated. I'm very passionate, but I don't feel like I should have to fight for proper health care. And in that moment, I felt like, if I don't become a little bit more adamant and stern about them seeing me, I won't be seen. And so I had to do that. And then we came in. I remember at this point, my mom and sister had flew in. And my husband, so we're all on the way. And I remember my mom during check-in, I'm checking in. She was like, tell them it's Dr. Marsh checking in. And I was like, oh no, Mom. I was like, I don't do that. I don't throw that doctor word around. I'll just check in as my normal self. Like in hindsight, I kind of wish that I did. So anyway, we check in, we start the induction process. Things are going well the first 24 hours. So this is Friday to Saturday. They're like, yeah, you're contracting the contractions are picking up, and we might give you a little bit more drugs to induce, but things are going great. Like my blood pressure is great. Everything's going well. And then Saturday, I think we decide apparently I had like a rupture in the superior part of my membrane. That's why I was leaking. So the doctor wanted to finish rupturing because the bottom wasn't. So we broke the bag. We got the epidural. We did the other drugs Saturday. And then later, Saturday night is when things just started to go awry. First of all, my epidural it never was working properly. And at some point, it just stopped working. In the middle of the night, I'm like shaking and throwing up. Mind you, I can't eat. So I'm just throwing up the liquid from the ice chips that I've been chewing. And we're like, something's wrong with the epidural. And so they go get the anesthesiologist because she was in the OR. She's like, I'm in the OR right now. I'm going to undo all this tape. And when I get done, I'll come back and redo it. And so we're like, okay, great. In the meantime, they're beautiful nurses, thank God. have been giving me pain medication to kind of bridge that gap. Cause I'm like, I feel everything. I'm fully blown contracting. And so for some reason, it started working after she released the tape. I don't know what was happening, but it started working. So we're like, okay, it's game time. The doctor comes in. She's like, it's 1 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. By 1 o'clock, you should be ready to push. I'll be back. And so I'm like, let me get some good sleep. Cause my mom told me, she's like, you're going to be pushing for hours. So I'm terrified. I'm like, hours? Like, I'm going to be exhausted. So she's like, get some sleep. We turn the lights down. We're sleeping. I wake up occasionally. My mom is not asleep. She is staring at that monitor. And I remember people coming in and out. They're putting these devices inside of me. And I'm like, I don't know what the deal is. It seems like something's wrong, but they're not communicating it to me. And I just feel myself getting like further and further away from actually being present. But in my mind, I'm like, let me just sleep. And so I remember my mom standing beside me. And then it's like in and out of eyes open, eyes closed, eyes open. And now my husband's standing beside me and they're both looking at the monitor. And then I remember like eyes closed, now eyes open again. And I'm covered in blankets. My mom's just covering me in all the warm blankets and I'm shivering. And they're both just kind of pacing back and forth, looking at the monitor. And I hear my mom say, she's not been contracting for the past 2 hours. Something is wrong. And I'm shivering. And so people are coming in, they're checking my temperature. And I hear the number every time they check it. It's going up and up and up. And at this point, I'm like, I don't know why, but I couldn't talk. I'm just like, these things are happening to me and I'm just sitting here shivering. And I remember my husband getting upset because originally the plan was if things were to go as planned, I would start pushing at 1. It's 4 a.m. now. And nurses have been in and out trying to fix this problem, use this new device. To this day, I don't even know what that device was and why they couldn't get it to work. I think it wasn't working because I wasn't contracting. And so I remember saying to my husband, I was like, make sure you ask for the attending, because I love nurses, but at the end of the day, the attending needs to know what's going on. And so he's running through the hallways. He's like, where's the attending? Blah, blah, blah. My wife's not okay. And she comes in and I could just see the concern on her face when she walks in. And it was like, what's going on? And like, I guess they told her my temperature. She's like, you have an infection. And I'm kind of like, in my mind, I'm like, I knew this was going to happen. And so basically what happened was my body was like, this is an emergency. Our body is under an infection. Her life is at risk. We're shutting down labor. Like, we're not worried about labor right now. We're worried about saving her life is what my body decided. And so she tells me, she goes, they never should have sent you home on Thursday. And so my husband and I, we like pause and we're like, okay. And so she says, you have an infection, you have a fever. I think it's called meconium when the baby poops in the sac, and now that it's just all going within your body. You're not contracting anymore. So these are all bad things. And so we're solution-based people. We're like, okay, so what do we do? And she's like, well, it would just make things a little complicated because with you not contracting anymore, the baby's already down in the pelvis. And she goes, look, feel. And no, of course we didn't feel. We're like, this isn't a feeling though. I want to feel her outside of my body when she's safe. And so my husband goes, so should we do surgery? And then she goes, yeah, we should do surgery. And then she goes, but there's a lot of risk involved because of the infection, because you're not contracting, you're going to lose a lot of blood. And my husband at that point, because I look at him and he's in an emotional state. So he gets up and he steps out to like get himself together. And so I look at the doc and I say, hey, if this was you, would you be concerned? And she paused and she said, yeah. And so I remember I was not really conscious that whole time, but I came to for this part. I'm like, I looked her in her eyes and I said, I need you to make sure me and my baby make it out of this hospital. And there was nurses around. So I think initially maybe it was taking a little light, but I held that gaze and I said it again. And she goes, I got you. And then I said, when are we doing this surgery? She said, let's do it now. And within 15 minutes, my whole birth plan changed. And so we were rushed into an emergency C-section, and I lost almost 4 liters of blood. It was pretty bad. But baby girl was healthy. I was so happy. She's big. She was almost 10 pounds, 9 pounds, 11 ounces, 21 inches, head full of hair, which would explain all the heartburn. But the reason why we had to stay in the hospital for almost a week wasn't because of her, because she was thriving. It was me. My body, after losing so much fluid and getting the infection and losing so much blood, it took time for my body to recover. It took time even after I recovered for my milk to come in, because what I learned later is your milk that you feed your baby, breast milk, is made from blood. I've already lost blood. My body's trying to replenish. They gave me bags of blood to replenish, but I still needed more. So I was so frustrated because I'm like, I'm trying to feed my baby. I don't think she's getting enough milk. She's already a big baby, so I know she eats more than most, and I don't even think I'm making enough. So there was just a lot of prayer, patience with myself, because I had to understand that not only did I just go through a traumatic experience and I'm trying to take care of this child, my body's trying to take care of me. Like, I am not at my best right now. And so we used the next few days in that hospital room just to love on baby girl and focus on the fact that we had this beautiful baby here, and to go slow. And my husband, he has been a saint. My mom and sister are so helpful. My husband has been taking night shifts since then. I am not in the newborn trenches, so I thank God for a husband like him. My mom has been here. My dad has been here. So we have been surrounded by so much family help. And during a time like this is so necessary, because I can't imagine if I didn't have people advocating for me when I couldn't. I was shivering. I had a fever. I had an infection. My body had stopped contracting. I couldn't be an advocate for myself. And that's why I finally told my story at 5 weeks. I wanted to wait 3 months, but people need to know, come ready to advocate for yourself, because I could only imagine if somebody didn't advocate. And the moment that shifted in the hospital room, and it was right before we did surgeries, I think my husband said, this is negligence. And everybody kind of froze. Nobody likes those type of words being used in the hospital. And then they're like kind of concerned, like, why would he say that? And I was like, I don't think he's wrong. I'm a healthcare professional. And then they're like, oh, well, what do you do? I'm like, I'm an eye doctor and he's an attorney. The service that we got from that moment on was drastically different. And that's why when my mom said, introduce yourself as Dr. Marsh, and I'm like, oh no, Mom, that's arrogant. I wish I would have been arrogant, because I would have had my baby on Thursday and we wouldn't have went through all of this trauma. And so I don't do that, because I don't feel like you should be treated different. The oath that we take as healthcare providers, it doesn't say anything about people's status in life, people's age, people's money, people's religion. You're supposed to give people the best quality care. And in my mind, I hold myself to that standard. So naive as it may be, I was holding other people to that standard as well. And that's just not the world that we live in. So it was heavy on my heart the weeks after, not only recovering, but just feeling for women that go through this and they didn't have anybody to advocate for them. Some people have lost their child. Some people have lost their baby. And since going online, hundreds of people have told their story, and my heart goes out for them. But I am so proud of myself for building the courage to talk about it, because hopefully it just brings more awareness and people can come into these situations more prepared, more filled with knowledge. Hopefully that rate of Black women and maternal death rate will go down the more we educate ourselves. And I just hope that sharing my story will have some type of positive impact on other people's lives. And I even applaud other people. Well, I'm going to applaud myself for telling my story, because it created a safe space for women to feel like they could tell their story. I just think as a community, we should continue to do that. Women of all races have had a lot of different stories, and I feel like pregnancy and the challenges that we go through even before delivery is very much minimized. So after we got back to the postpartum delivery room, baby, my husband, mom and sister, we did have some people visit. Mind you, this is after we've announced our professions and all of that. So everybody was so attentive. I would say the nurses were attentive throughout the entire experience. They have some really phenomenal nurses there. But we started getting more attention from actual doctors and administration once we got to that room. I don't know if it's normal, but like the anesthesiologists would keep coming in and checking in. We had the head of the OB-GYN department came in. I did not know who this person was, but they came in and was asking us how we're doing. Mind you, I told you hubby and I wanted to focus on the positive and just create a safe space for healing because I was healing in that time. So they're like, how's it going? We're like, oh yeah, we're fine. They're like, oh, do you have any questions? We're like, oh no. And so she goes, well, I heard about what happened. And I just want you to know I am the head of the OB-GYN department here and it doesn't get higher than me. So I want to talk about your experience. So then we were like, oh, and of course, word vomit, this and that, this. And then I told her, I said, I understand short staff. I work in Central Illinois. I have a hard time referring to surgeons myself because we just don't have a lot available in this area. I told her, from the phone call, triaging me over the phone. That is how people get sued. I was like, they didn't even look me up. And she was like, yeah, I was actually sitting next to him when he was on hold and he told me what happened. And I was the one who gave the okay for you to come in. And I was like, okay, great. She's like, but he did look you up. I said, after I said the risk of infection goes up after 24 hours, it's been 30 hours. Are you okay with that? That is when he looked me up and checked in with you. But initially I was dismissed. And had I gone along with it, I wouldn't have been able to come in. She's like, yeah, well, we definitely have some areas that we need to do more training and blah, 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 blah. And we're short staffed. And I'm like, I understand that. I want to remind you that I also work in Central Illinois as a healthcare provider. I am an eye doctor. I understand, but it still doesn't justify what's going on. And so we kind of go into a little bit more of the intricate details of my birth experience. And I paused in one of those things and I go, I am not allowed to make those type of mistakes. And she pauses. And so I'm like, I owe more than my patients than that. I was owed more than that. And I feel like the continuity of care from beginning to end has just not been present. I feel like I haven't been seen. I feel like nobody has been monitoring me. And I told her to this day, I've only seen my OB once. Does she even know what's going on with me? Am I seeing her in the future? I told them when I went in for my appointment while I was pregnant, this is how things get slipped through the cracks. And I said, and this is exactly what has happened. And so we talked for maybe 30, 45 minutes. And she goes, well, I hope this conversation helps you feel blah, 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 blah. And my husband goes, well, we appreciate you coming in, but we're still going to file a formal complaint. And she was like, well, that's fine. It's just going to come to my desk because all complaints come to my desk. But we'll do the investigation, but it's just going to come to my desk anyway. And so we go, okay. And so like she said, well, we left. We did consult an attorney and he asked me, I told him the whole story. Everybody's just appalled at the experience. He is the real deal person. And he goes, how are you? I said, I'm fine now. All of my numbers and stats and all of that was off, but we're doing good now. She's like, how's baby girl? Is she going through any? I said, no, she's fine. He said, I'm going to be honest with you. You went through a really awful situation, but because there are no damages currently, there is no case. And I told him, I said, well, I thank God that there are no damages and I will take no damages over anything else. And I hope that you don't hear from me again. And he said, I hope not either. And he said, but I do want to just give you a heads up because I know you're going to file a formal complaint. You're going to get a single sheet of paper of them basically saying nothing more than, sorry, that was your experience. And he said, you're not even going to get a sorry. And so I took that and I kept that. And this past week, we got that single sheet of paper. And I remember the line in there that kind of broke my heart the most was, other than all of the lies that I saw, the line that broke my heart the most was, it's unfortunate that your birth experience did not go as planned, comma, as most don't. Because my husband read it to me, and I literally said, why did they have to put that? Why did they have to put that there? Like, not only are you not saying sorry, not only are you not saying we will do better in the future, not only are you not saying, I'm sorry that you had this experience. I understand legally for you not assuming the responsibility. I understand the legal ramifications behind it. My husband is an attorney. I understand all of that. But why would you say that? And in that moment, I was like, I see why women don't speak about their experience. I see why women don't speak about their experience, because to go through all of that and to file a complaint with the hospital and to be waiting for the letter, they're like, we're going to be doing an investigation. I wasn't expecting the world, but maybe just like, we will make sure that you will have a better experience moving forward. It just felt like a slap in the face. Like, I see why women don't. So I'm proud of myself for speaking out. I'm so thankful to God, because God has a bigger plan for our family, obviously. But the accountability it just wasn't there. And as a healthcare provider myself, even if I felt like I have done nothing wrong, I am still going to show sympathy and empathy for my patient's experience. And just for you to, it was just a letter of being dismissed. And I know the attorney braced us for that, but the wording that was used was so harsh that I just felt like, thank you. I just felt like a lot of that, I was like, who typed this letter and was like, yeah, this is a good letter to send to a mom of postpartum who went through a traumatic experience and didn't know if she was going to make it home with her baby girl. She was scared for her life and her child's life. This is a good letter to send to her. Like, who approved that? And like the lady said, this is going to come to my desk. If this is a letter that she approved, that's very different than the conversation that we had in the hospital. Because the conversation that we had in the hospital, she acted like she halfway cared, but that letter showed something completely different. So advocate for yourself, because after it's all said and done, there's not a lot of care on the back end. I don't consider myself a very emotional person, but I wasn't planning on getting emotional here. But that letter just came in this week, and I completely just went and did something else because I was like, I don't want to think about this. And so in this moment, I've had to talk about it and think about it. And it's a part of the experience that was very unfortunate, but I have a beautiful baby girl, and that's just what I've been choosing to focus on. I think, a 2 month? So postpartum care for the woman, I think there's 2 appointments. I already had the first one. My mind's a little fuzzy. I don't remember if it was 2 weeks or 4 weeks, but we came in, I saw an RN. She was great. I've worked with her one time before, and I remember telling her at that appointment, I was like, I've had a pretty bad experience. She was like, I was looking at your chart. She said, everything that could have went wrong. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about your experience. And she's great, because even she was the one who checked my cervix the first time, and I was supposed to see a doctor that day. And then she came in because the doctor was unavailable. And first I was disappointed. And after the appointment, I said, I know I was supposed to see a doctor today, but you have given me one of the best experiences throughout this pregnancy. And so I was happy to see her again. And I told her that at that postpartum appointment, I was like, you were one of the best experiences I had throughout the entire pregnancy. So I want to thank you for how much care you showed. And even now, for you to say, I'm sorry, this is your experience, I appreciate that. And so, she checked my incision. Everything was great. I do have a it was supposed to be a 6 weeks appointment. I guess it's 8 weeks. So I think that's with somebody new that I haven't seen, which is pretty typical of my entire experience at that hospital. But it's not with my OB. So I don't think maybe I'll ever see that lady again. So hopefully I can switch to a different care provider, maybe at another hospital, but I don't feel comfortable staying under the care of who I'm under now because I wasn't cared for by that person. As far as going into the birthing experience, becoming more prepared, I'm always going to be an advocate for education. So I think one of the things that did help me is I think I bought my pump through Aeroflow, and they had some classes associated with that. So I took all of those classes and they were super helpful with knowing what's normal, what's not normal, all of that stuff. I had that friend from high school who's a doula. We sat down and had a Zoom call with her. She gave us so much information. In hindsight, had I known the importance of a doula or a midwife, that was all very new to me. I really didn't know what a doula was. I think I ChatGPT'd it right before the meeting. I would have had more Zoom calls with her. She lived in Georgia, I live in Illinois. I maybe would have found one locally as well. With the conversations with you and you told me about the midwife department. Had I had known that having a midwife and having a different route of care was available at that hospital, that is something I definitely would have looked into. But I think with all the education, that's the foundation of going into anything. I think one of the things that I advocate for women going into this process was making sure you're fully utilizing your maternity leave and short-term disability. And there was a lot of things that I didn't know, and I had to kind of go looking for the answers to figure out, okay, this is this, but what if this? And there's some additional benefits out there that I think people are not tapping into to make sure you're getting the full benefits out of what you have, because having a clear mind and having low stress going into childbirth is priority. So if that means you need to go on short-term disability or yada, yada, yada to create that safe space going into it, you need to go into this stress-free and with a clear mind, because it's not like the movies. And so I would say all of those aspects, but most importantly, don't go to these appointments alone if you don't have to. Don't go into that hospital room and if you don't have to, because like I said, if I wasn't able to advocate for myself, and I'm glad that I have people who did, I probably would have included my husband in a little bit more of the classes, because I was just like, let me do it for myself. I didn't anticipate me not being able to talk. And so educate your partner as well, because you never know what's going to happen. Shout out to my husband and his family. He is Nigerian, and I would say that they have been showering me with love. Whenever they call, they're like, thank you so much, my wife, for doing this for us. Like, I think we as Americans need to adapt that culture. Like, they have just been showering me with thanks for carrying our child. Thank you for going through this experience. We're praying for you. We're checking on you. And a lot of like a culture here is just like, oh, the baby's doing well, forget about the mom. They have been they have been taking care of and checking on both of us. So I really appreciate that. Be intentional about who you have a baby with. That's like the real tea.